it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to share something incredibly simple that you can copy from Maria Sharapova's forehand to help improve your forehand. Now, this video is sponsored by playercourt.com. If you want to play more tennis and find people in your local area to practice with, compete against, or even a coach who's near you, use my link in the description, playercourt.com/2minutetennis to get 50% off when you join. Now here is a great view of Sharapova hitting the forehand. I want to show you right before she hits, during her hit, and just after her hit. Something really, really simple. I want you to notice just before she hits the ball, how her strings are facing down. So just before her contact, her racket is facing slightly closed. What does this mean? And her racket, I already measured it. It's about 10 degrees closed. So what this means is that you can actually hit a ball with your racket face slightly closed, and closed means facing slightly down, as long as you swing up enough with racket speed. So I want you to notice something. She is not rolling her racket through contact, where a lot of people think like, oh, you roll the racket over the ball. That's not what you want. I want you to notice that just before she hits the ball, she has her racket at this angle. During contact, she's got her racket at that angle. And just after contact, she's got her racket at that angle. So her strings are staying the same amount of closed as she's hitting the ball. But notice that her racket is going from below contact to above contact. The key to topspin is you want to see if you can create a difference between where the strings are pointing and where the racket is traveling. And if you could have your racket face ever so slightly closed, where the feeling is you're leading slightly with the top edge of the racket. The top edge of the racket is what is leading as you're hitting. Just before contact, during contact, and just after contact, it creates an incredibly consistent contact where you're not going to be hitting the net, you're not going to be hitting out, you're going to be hitting the ball in over and over again. And just to show you that she hits this ball in, here she rips the forehand. You can see her running forward because she got her opponent in trouble, right? So that's kind of the idea. So when you drop your racket down in the back, you want your strings to be closed. You want your strings to face down. And we can see that they're facing down because if we zoom in here, we can see the outside edge of her throat, and then we can see the inside edge of the throat. So that tells us that the strings are facing down. So when you drop the racket, you want to tilt your strings down toward the ground. And you can notice she's below the ball. We can use this line of the bottom of the fence to show where her racket is compared to the ball. So she's below the ball. Now she's swinging up through contact. She's really driving this ball. She's not swinging severely up. She's driving more through it, more penetrating into the back of the ball. But again, her racket is slightly closed prior, during, and that's a great view. You don't always get a great view like that of ball and racket touching. And then her racket face slightly closed. All right, let me show you this on the Topspin Pro. Now, to get a Topspin Pro for at-home practice, you know what to do. Grab my affiliate link in the description below, and I'm going to pin it in the first comment. It would mean the world to me if you used my link. Thank you so much. All right, how do we produce that contact that Sharapova just had? Where just before contact, during, and just after contact, her strings were ever so slightly closed. There was no roll of the racket, which is what you see a lot of new players trying. They're like, I'm going to roll the racket for spin. The ball's not on the strings long enough for you to contact the ball, turn with the ball still touching your strings, and then the ball leaves. It doesn't happen. In fact, by the time you even feel the ball hit your racket, by the time the signal gets to the brain, the ball's already gone. And, so you're not able to roll the racket over the ball. What you actually want is to have the racket down below contact with the strings closed, and then they stay closed just before, during, and just after you hit the ball. Now, you really need to make sure that you're swinging fast when you do this. So don't just take the racket to this point. You won't have enough racket speed. You want to make more of a circular swing, and the speed builds on top of itself, and then you can swing really fast as you're hitting the ball. Anytime you can create a disparity between where the racket and strings are facing and where the racket is traveling, you're going to create spin. Let me say that again. You want to create a difference, a disparity, a difference between where the strings are pointing and where the racket is traveling. And typically, the greater the disparity between those two, the more rotation you're going to get on the ball, which is why instead of just having your racket straight up and down and swinging up through it, if you can have your racket face ever so slightly closed a few degrees, you're going to get even more spin because that creates a greater disparity between where the strings are pointing and where the racket's traveling. So as you're practicing on your Topspin Pro, I'm going to get this lined up exactly so that you can see this. Perfect. As I'm going to contact, I need my strings facing slightly down. That's going to kind of rub the ball rather than hit the ball. Now that's more of a low to high swing where I'm traveling up the angle of the shield on the Topspin Pro, which is set at 10 degrees. I'm actually set at that angle perfectly. But if I want to practice more of the Sharapova swing, where I'm going more through the ball rather than up like Nadal, where Nadal puts so much spin on the ball, then I can take the top shield off. Now I can go more through the ball. So my strings are closed, but I'm going more through contact to hit the ball more. You can still see that the ball is spinning plenty, but I am creating spin because my racket face is slightly closed going from low to high, but I'm also hitting the ball very hard because I'm actually able to swing more through it because I took the top shield off. Get yourself a Topspin Pro, just for a family member, for a child, for your tennis club, and if you're a pro, you gotta get it for your students so they can practice what it's like to see and look at spin as they feel the friction. Work on having your racket face slightly closed. Don't roll. Don't think like, oh, I'm going to roll the racket over the ball. That's because the racket's straight up and down in the back, and then you had to roll the racket to hit. Tilt the strings down and feel like they're staying ever so slightly down as you hit the ball, going up and through. You can still go over the shoulder just like Sharapova, but work on this technique through contact, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.